Thank you, chairpersons. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take you the journey of what bites the brain after biting is the Japanese encephalitis. And I think this is a disease which is really rapidly emerging in our country. So I think it's good to know about the vaccines that are available. So 60% of the world's population is now at risk of JE, and that is almost 4 billion people. Many countries in Asia are very rapidly increasing in the incidence of the JE. Almost 70,000 cases occur annually, but that's a gross underestimate because this is not a notifiable disease in many countries. It affects usually the young people, but we have seen after vaccination has been started in many districts, there is a shift to the older adults, so even adult vaccination has started. During outbreaks and in areas with childhood vaccination, adults cannot be spared. Now, 1 in 50 to 1 in 1000 get clinical, 1 in 50 to 1000 get clinical disease. And once you have Japanese encephalitis, 1/3 would die, 1/3 would have sequelae, only 20 to 30% will actually escape without any major issue. And because of the rapid rise, I think there's a lot of interest generated in how to prevent this dreaded disease. So these are the types of children we see in many public hospitals in the country. So what is worrisome is this, that you can see this is 1955 to 2005 and you can see some states which have JE, and you can see a lot of India had JE even then, and now you can see gradually it's becoming more and more affected. So you can see Gujarat though has sort of still escaped major JE cases, but Maharashtra is engulfed, now it's becoming more green, and it has almost spread to more than 3/4 of the country. Now, these are the number of reported JE cases and the deaths, and again, this is the tip of the iceberg, as I said, because many cases go unnoticed, but very important to know that over the years, the cases have gone up, and also the mortality because of JE in India. And many of these JE cases are not diagnosed and they are labeled as AES, or acute encephalitis syndrome. So there are other data available on AES and the deaths, and many of them could be also because of JE. But if you have not done the CSF capture ELISA, you will not label that AES as a case of JE. And you need to prevent, because treatment is dreaded. So the only way you can actually prevent a morbidity and mortality is by vaccinating. So you had this mouse brain vaccine, but it was discontinued because of the fear of side effect, because it's an animal protein. And then came the first Chinese vaccine, SA14-14-2, which was used in many countries. It's still being used in many countries like Sri Lanka, as I understand from our guest from Sri Lanka. We also use this vaccine in our national program. Mouse brain is given up, and very recently even the Chinese vaccine has been given up from India, and India has moved to our own indigenous vaccine made by either the Bharat Biotech, which is the Genvac, or the biologically, which is available as Jeev. So just a word as to what happened to SA14-14-2. It was a vaccine which was a live attenuated vaccine which was made from China, and through a collaboration between the two governments, this vaccine was provided at a very low cost to the Indian government for use in the public health. It was used in a campaign mode for the first year for children up to 15 years of age, starting from 1 year, and then include that vaccine as a national program, initially as a 1 dose at 16 to 18 months. It was started in 2006 when I was the president of the IAP, so I remember very distinctly 8 districts where it was started, and gradually it increased to many districts, as I'll show you later. And later it was shifted from 1 dose to a 2-dose schedule, with first dose with measles containing vaccine at 9 months, and the second again with measles containing vaccine at 16 to 18 months. Now, initially 1 dose was used because the Nepal, they had shown that if you have a good coverage of the vaccine, then the vaccine efficacy was as high as 80 to 90%. But this was then tried in India, as I said, where they showed that the vaccine, this is Nepal, which showed immediate efficacy of 99% and up to 5 years data, which is published recently, showing that the vaccine efficacy was as high as 96%. But in India, that was not so when it was used in India, and this is a case control trial done by Dr. Tandale's group, which showed that the efficacy was as poor as 43, 70 or 75%. And that forced the government of India to include a second dose of the vaccine in the 15 months, at the age of 15 months. And when 2 doses were used, the efficacy did improve, and you can see the efficacy then became 86.7% to 89%, still not 100%. But by then, the Indian manufacturer made their vaccine, so a switch had to happen, and the government switched from the Chinese vaccine to now 2 doses of Indian vaccine. And what are the Indian vaccines? So as I said, there's a Kolar strain vaccine from biological Bharat Biotech, which is available as Genvac, and you have this inactivated SA1442 Virocell vaccine, which is available from biologically as GIV. And there is one international vaccine, which is a chimeric vaccine between yellow fever and JE, but which is not available in India. So I am going to speak essentially on Genvac because that is the today's, and I cannot cover every vaccine in the time given. So if you have to talk about this Genvac, this is how it's available. Of course, it's in short supply because there's so much of demand, but I'm sure in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the supply will improve. So it is the inactivated JE vaccine, which is thermostable, made from Kolar strain, obtained from an Indian patient, provided by the NIV Pune ICMR laboratory. It's grown on Virocell culture lines, so there is no worry about any animal protein. Passage history 17 times in suckling mice, and original seed titer is something like 10⁻⁷, and it's an LM adjuvanted vaccine, so it has to be given intramuscularly. The dose is 0.5 ml given intramuscularly, and the capacity to produce is 25 million doses. But Mr. Mir Shah is here. I'm sure with the demand that is there, he'll be very happy to double it or triple it as per the need of the country. So a phase 2-3 trial was done in the form of a double-blind randomized control trial, and as that time the Chinese vaccine was the story, they had used 2 doses of Genvac at 0 and 28 days versus a single dose of live vaccine, because that was the standard of care that time to use the live vaccine. And as per the double-blind randomized control, those who received Chinese vaccine 1 dose, they received a placebo saline on 28 days just to match 2 vaccine or 2 injections given to subjects. So 9 sites in India almost randomized 3:1 to either the new vaccine from Bharat Biotech versus the existing Chinese vaccine. And the endpoints were to look at the immunogenicity, what is known as a PRNT50, the neutralizing titer of the antibody against the JE, baseline, then 1 month, 2 months, and then followed up to 2 years every 6 months. And you can see the age groups included were above 18 to below 50 years, and 150 subjects, 6 to 18 years, another 150, and 1 to 6 years, another 170. So around 500 subjects were included in the new vaccine arm, and 3:1 ratio, so around 150 in the reference arm, which received the single dose of SA1442 vaccine. The primary endpoint was seropositivity and seroprotection titer above 1:10, which is taken as a protective titer. There was also another way of looking at it, that if the baseline titer were already above 1:10, then a 4-fold rise titer was taken post-vaccination as significant, and those who were negative or below 1:10, if they became above 1:10, that was taken as a positive response by the vaccine. And of course, the secondary endpoint was also to look at the titers at baseline and then at 1 month. So first of all, the safety data. So you can see here the dark red is Genvac, and the yellow is the SA1442 Chinese vaccine. So almost 18% of the children on both the arms had fever, which was similar between the two. And you can see other side effects like body ache, vomiting were in less than 1 or 2%. And pain at injection site was responded around 5%, but again it was similar between the two. This was post dose 1. As the new vaccine also was given as second dose compared to placebo in the SA1442 arm. So you can see here still fever was much less with the second dose, less than 1%, and the injection pain site was again less at around 2 to 3%. So both the doses, probably safety was established, and it was as safe as the existing vaccine for the first dose or the saline placebo given for the second dose. Now most important is the immunogenicity. So you can see here, these are the percentage of subjects who had more than 1:10 if baseline, or if they were below 1:10, then or a fold rise if they are above 1:10. So that I said you before. So you can see here the green is the Genvac after first dose, and the blue is the SA1442 after first dose. And you can see here there was a remarkable seroconversion of 95.8% versus 58% in small children 1 to 6 years. Same way 93 versus 59 for up to 18 years. And these are the children under focus because we are using this vaccine essentially for the first 15 years. But also in adults, and that's important because as I said, there is a shift to the right in the epidemiology, and adults also need the vaccine. So good, they have studied also in adults up to the age of 50 years, and you can see again the seroconversion was almost double in the Genvac arm compared to the SA14-14-2 arm. So overall you can see 93.4% versus 57.6% following the first dose. And when you give the second dose, the seroconversion jumped to almost 98% plus for all the age group, whereas because the second dose of SA14-42 was not given, they were given placebo, you can see the seroconversion started dropping. So in fact, it dropped to as low as 39 to 40% in the Chinese vaccine arm. What about the seroprotection rate? Again, you can see baseline very similar, 9.4 versus 13.7 say for children in the first 6 years of life. And you can see here nearly 100% seroprotection by the new vaccine compared to 56 to 76% in the Chinese vaccine, and that's reflecting almost similar for all the age group to give you an overall seroprotection of 99% with the new vaccine compared to 77% with the Chinese vaccine, which drops to 60% when the second dose is not given. And the titers, you can see here, the titers on day 0, that is baseline, are very similar, around 5 to 6 cutting across all the age group, and they jump to almost 150 to 200 depending upon which age group you look at after the first dose of Genvac, whereas with the SA14-14-2 the titers are around 30 to 40. And when the second dose is given, you can see a massive boostability with the Genvac, with the titers reaching almost 800 plus in children who are below 6 years, and overall titer jumping from 140 to 460. And as I said, as SA14-14-2 second dose was not given, the titers actually dropped within a year from 38.5 to 25.9. So there is a near 100% seroconversion and seroprotection, and a very high titer even with the first dose itself, which are shown to be boostable when the second dose is given. And a multi-dose vial is used in the public health, so they had to show that the multi-dose will work as good as single dose. So they looked at the titers and seroconversion and seroprotection in an arm where a vaccine was given from a single dose vial as compared to an arm from where the vaccine was given from multi-dose vial. And you can see here baseline were the same, and day 28, day 56, the titers were very similar at around 140 to 150 and jumping to almost 500 after the second dose. And also the seroprotection is nearly 95 to 97%, no matter whether you use a single dose vial or a multi-dose vial. And they also studied the homologous and heterologous immune response. So you take the serum from the vaccinated children either with the SA14-42 or the new vaccine, and you see its ability to neutralize either the same virus. So if it is Genvac serum, Genvac Kolar strain, and also the SA14-14 strain. And the same way, when you take the serum from the SA14-14-2 children, again you look at the neutralization, again the same SA14-14 strain or the Kolar strain. So very intricate study done, and you can see here overall on day 56, whether you use the original strain of Kolar or the SA14-42, the Genvac sera could neutralize almost all of them. But that was not true for Chinese vaccine, where if you use the Chinese serum, it induced more antibody against its own strain, and still it was just around 61.5%, and there was hardly any heterologous response against the Kolar strain, which was around 38% on day 56. Which means no matter which is the strain which you want to neutralize, the antibody generated by Genvac will be antibody neutralizing all the strain, whereas SA14-14-2 will only neutralize then SA14-14-2 virus and not the other strain. As you know, there are more number of strains as far as JE is concerned than just one single strain. And again, you can see seroprotection is nearly 100% no matter which virus you use to study neutralization, whereas here you see it's almost 60%, and again the heterologous protection is lesser than in the homologous protection. So this is a study. As I said, there are more strains. You can see there are genotype 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And the Genvac sera have been tried to neutralize, and you can see it neutralizes all these 6 viruses no matter which genotype you are looking at. So except type 5, where their studies are still ongoing, for other 6 types, the titers generated by GenVac is able to neutralize most of these strains of the virus. So you don't have to worry about what strain is circulating in your area. And there is a follow-up study till 24 months, and you can see here that in overall about 1 to 50 years, you can see the seroprotection does drop from high 50% to around 70 to 80% with the GenVac, and from high 80% to around 50% for the SA14-14-2. And if you stratify the year-wise, you can see a very similar result where the overall seroprotection is better with GenVac over 24 months as compared to SA14-14-2. But in both, it does drop to around 60 to 70%. This is the reason why, even though the DCGI has given one dose license for the GenVac, the IAP says that as the seroconversion and seroprotection are dropping, you need to give a second dose just to be sure that you don't miss any child, because this is a disease which is dreaded. So not only the seroprotection, but even titers do drop. Of course, they are still above the 10, which is the cutoff, but because again the titers are dropping, maybe giving the second dose will be really helpful. All right, then a phase 4 trial has been done where they have now used a single dose of GenVac and a single dose of SA14-14-2 to be sure as to what's happening, and a booster is given later at around 2 years. And again, the same immune response is studied at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year and 2 years. Very elaborate study. So you can see here the seroconversion starts from very high 80-90% for the GenVac, whereas around 50% with the SA14-14-2, and over the years it does drop to around 60%. Same way seroprotection drops from 92 to 81%, and titers drop from 83 to 33.7%. And what they do is, this is the age-wise distribution. You can see here the titers are much better in children who are younger compared to children who are a little older, and that is expected for most of the vaccine. And now what they do is they interchange. So there were 4 groups. Those who received GenVac received a booster of GenVac. Those received SA14-14-2 received a booster of SA14-14-2, or they gave the alternate vaccine. So you had 4 groups: 2 doses of GenVac, 1 dose of GenVac and second dose of SA14-14-2, 2 doses of SA14-14-2, or a first dose SA14-14-2 and second dose of GenVac, and they studied at baseline, that is at 2 years when the booster was given, and 1 month after the booster. So I showed you that this was the seroconversion, seroprotection at day 720. So if you take this at 720 where the titers have dropped, and now you have given a booster, so you can see what happens with the booster. Those who received GenVac and a second GenVac had the highest titers. Those who received GenVac followed by SA14-14-2 had still good titers. Those who received SA14-14-2 followed by GenVac had the intermediate titer, and 2 doses of SA14-14-2 had the lowest titer. So the best titer achieved when you use both GenVac strains or at least one of the GenVac strain, as compared to either using both Chinese vaccine or a Chinese vaccine followed by a GenVac. So GenVac has shown much higher titer when you boost. So you can see here at 2 years, the seroconversion is 53%, the titers are about 10, and when you give the vaccine, the second dose at 2 years, the titers jump. So that will be the question, when do you give the booster? You can give booster or the second dose at 15 months as done in public health, but you can even wait up to 2 years and give it because you will have a better immune response. And there is post-marketing surveillance done on more than 10,000 subjects, which has shown that there is no red flag sign as far as any adverse or serious adverse effect is seen in any age group, including in boys and girls. Now, as I said, there is an epidemic shift to the right in adults. So a network of 49 laboratories in 24 states have established an AES workup. This can diagnose 27 different viral etiologies of AES, essentially by doing a biofires type of test. So from Jan 14 to April 17, 23 labs investigated more than 15,000 cases of AES, of which around 1321 were JE as captured on CSF ELISA, and 46% of these JE cases were in above 15 years of old subject. So now you see, from a disease which was predominantly in the first 15 years of life, it has now shifted to 50% of them occurring above 15 years, that is in the young adults. And this is essentially more in Assam and in the northeast states, but I'm sure the same will happen in any country which is using this vaccine in the national program. And another studies from 2008 to 2010 in Assam, in 9 government hospitals and 8 private hospitals also showed the same thing. The 66% of the cases were actually now seen in adults above the age of 15 years after using the childhood vaccination. So post-childhood vaccination, there's a shift. Mass vaccination was done in 2011 and again in 2014 in adults now so that they should not get into trouble. And a case control trial was then done in adults between 2012 and 18, which showed you had 261 cases of JE matched with 522 control, and you can see the efficacy was 90% with the vaccine even in adults. So as good as in children, the vaccine efficacy was seen in adults. And it's very good that this Genvac has been studied in adults, and as I showed you before, even in adults above 18 years and up, the seroprotection is 97% and the titers are very high at around 105 with the first dose and 275 with the second dose. So this is the last slide, at how much can a mosquito fly? Okay, because that's the question, that if I am in Mumbai, Navi Mumbai Thana, there are lots of JE cases, will it come in Mumbai? Now we don't have the vector in Mumbai. Can the vector come? It can come in my car, it can come in a flight, it can come in a bus, it can come on our clothes. So the mosquitoes don't know the geographical binding, and you can see here the most important strain, which is the very difficult to pronounce, Tritonurhynchus. It can travel almost 7,500 meters. So 7.5 kilometers on its own, and with a blast of air it can go even further. How high can the mosquito fly? Around 10 to 20 feet. So if your garbage is on the ground floor, the first and the second floor will be affected with the mosquito bite. The top floor will not be. I think that's the reason why the builders charge you more if you take more and more higher floors in a new building. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.